How we doing today, guys? Sam and Alex back with you with this week's fishing report. Not a ton going on, but it's still a bunch of stuff to get out there and do, especially if you want to travel over to the shore where the perch are going.
I mean, it's been pretty consistent everywhere now. And when I say consistent is meaning you just got to be out there. Those perch are pretty much like on the spawn now. Water temperature got to the perfect temperature for them. And it's one of those things, guys, to remember that they're not going to be like a whole full week of like nonstop action. Unfortunately, now they seem to be more into like waves of like schools of fish will move up one day. It might be good for like 1 or 2 days, and then it's going to be a little quiet until you get more of those fish. Of course, there will be a peak to the spawn where most of those fish are going to be either going up or down the creeks where they're spawning. But as of now, I feel like we're on the start of things. We did get a couple waves of fish up in the Magothy this past week. Once again, it wasn't like red hot action, but if you were there on the right day, you could get a whole bunch of white perch and yellow perch. Now, the white perch being there doesn't mean that they're spawning. They tend to kind of sit around that area now for the past few years
Yeah,
pretty often.
especially on the western shore. I mean, on the eastern shore, things it's such on the Magothy, they don't really have to go very far.
No,
But if you look at some of those areas, the Chop Tank, the
it's a
upper
long way.
reaches, they got to go a long way. So you might not see the white perch quite yet. We're talking about yellow perch mostly. I mean,
Yeah,
that's really what's going to be in the focal point for you guys this week. Is the yellow perch, but the white perch are right behind them, guys, and you might see a few small, tiny schools of them pushing up, especially the males. They always come up first. We used to
right.
see those first. Um, but you got to remember, guys, it's all about being out there because when these fish are traveling up in these schools, they're traveling up together. It
Yeah,
might be a day before you might have a day where there's no fish where you're fishing from shore, whether that be Hillsborough, Greensboro, Tuckahoe, all
just the
those great
regular
places.
spots we
Yeah,
always talk about. I mean, and remember that change your tactics. We've been talking to a lot of people on the phone and in the store, and they're set on just sitting in one spot the whole day. That's not a great strategy to be going out there, especially if you're shore fishing, because those fish, like Sammy just mentioned, they might be 2 miles south of where you are
yeah,
in a deeper hole. The strategy I like to say it's move around if you can, and that means think about where you are. Like if you're in like Red Bridges right now, it might not be the red hot spot right now because that's like the upper part of the river. Greensboro might be okay, but if there's any other spots you could hit farther down the river and like a little bit deeper water, that'll be a good area to check out too. Like another report I got was from Denton, right? A lot of people having fishing right downtown Denton, and they're hoping to catch yellows, and they've been surprisingly enough catching a lot of white perch, just bottom fishing with bloodworms. They can't seem to find any of those yellows. Talked to a few people going up on boats, kayaks, etc., from Denton all the way up to Greensboro, and they're finding a few. So who knows what's going on there? But if you have a day and you're out there, work your way either from like down low to higher up in the water, uh, where it narrows down up in the small creeks. Uh, Same thing as Tuckahoe. We heard a few fish at Hillsborough, down by Stony Point. They were catching them pretty steady, and farther down they were tearing them up on like 20-foot holes down in the Tuckahoe. So they're going to be getting going here soon. The good old saying was St. Patrick's Day, it's typically the time of the year. But remember, this whole water temperature change, and with this mild weather we've had this whole winter, uh, who knows what they're doing?
yeah.
You just got to be out there. Minnows, crash shrimp, bloodworms, anything you put on there, they're gonna hit it. If you're throwing lure, small, bust some stingers are gonna work great. 1/16 to 1/8 of an ounce, even more if you're deeper. That's what you want to be using right now this time of the year for both whites and yellows. And if you're shallow, the famous flown fly, right?
Yep, you can't beat like a bobber with either a really light shad dart. And like I say, light is important here, guys. Even though they're spawning, the water temperature is still warm. And a lot of times when those fish are staging and they're not actually running, they're not driving up creek, they really don't want to move unless they have to, but they do have to eat. So the slow fall you get with the 132nds, even 160 4th ounce jigs,
Hmm.
that really promotes more bites than fishing with some of those heavier jigs.
Right.
Now, if you're fishing with a minnow, it's a different story.
Yeah.
You could put a jig head, 1/8 ounce, 60 quarter,
Bottom
whatever.
rig.
Bottom rig.
Yeah, anything.
Bottom rig is something you guys should also have with you guys. If you get into some of those deeper areas, If you're fishing an area that moves a lot, like say Greensboro, I mean that's
Martinet, all those places.
deeper,
Yeah,
faster water. A sabiki rig is probably going to be your best friend.
exactly. So keep an eye open. That should be, pretty much the next 2 weeks, maybe a month, where we're going to be getting this whole mix of yellows and whites. But there's plenty else to do now. We're in March. We're getting to that period where the difficult thing is going to be choosing what to do at some point in the spring because there's so much going on. I
One
did
thing there is to do is bass fish.
bass
They're
fish.
starting to move up shallow. A lot of the guys fishing around here have been doing really well. They're starting to get up shallow. You can start fishing some of your reaction baits, your moving baits, especially as we progress and get warmer here. Your chatter baits, those baits that kind of have a lot of
Right.
draw early in the springtime.
And other than that, like I said, everything's getting good now. If you're one of those guys that likes to do the traditional spring runs for some of the spawning fish, we haven't had full reports of shad yet in the Potomac or anywhere else like that. But we have seen a few surprise ones. I got a confirmed catch of a hickory in the upper uh, chop tank. The herring are up there too. They're doing their thing. So you know what that means. Those rockfish are up there right behind them too. So that's getting to be good here. I'll give it a week or two if we keep this mild temperatures, and we should start seeing our first few hickory shad get to the area here in the Potomac. Remember, Potomac starts first, and we gradually keep getting them up the bay. So that should be here soon, which that's one of my favorite things to do. That's how you know spring is pretty much here. Other than that, we got catfishing all throughout the area.
Yeah, if you want to go out there and have some fun, guys, this is really the time of year to do it. Now through, I'd say late May is probably the biggest swing of those bigger fish we have.
Yeah.
Fishing at any of the mouths of the river, if you can get out there on the boat, that's your best friend. But if you can't, it doesn't mean you can't catch them from shore. Sandy Point, guys catch them all year long at Sandy Point. You can go out there with some chunk bait, whether it be frozen LY. A lot of guys also like the mullet because it stays on the hook a lot better. That's another good option for you. But any sort of bait on the bottom, classic fish finder rig or Carolina rig, you'll be all set there, guys.
Yep. Other than that, once again, we are getting to the time of the year where those snakeheads are a thing, and people have been catching them. Mild days like we had this past week, you can get out there and catch a few. Remember, the better spots to get this early season snakeheads will be down in Blackwater. Me and myself and a good friend of mine went down to the Blackwater area, and we caught a few of them mixed in with some bass and some crappie. So that's going to be a thing now. Not necessarily live minnows right now, but we actually caught them on chatterbaits and small spinnerbaits. So that's another thing to kind of get ready. Like I said, just choose what you want to do and get out there. There's going to be plenty to do here in the next few weeks.
So, Alex, when you're down there snakehead fishing, are you targeting those classic areas we hear always about the mud flats this time of year, or are you back in the grass zone?
No, well, there's really no grass this time of the year, and
Yeah.
there's not like so much grass in Blackwater to say. There's like pat stems, and yes, you're looking for water temperature. You're looking like I carry my sonar. Most people say, "Why are you, using your sonar in 2 foot of water, or 3 foot of water?" And the biggest thing is water temperature. You might get into a spot where the wind's pushing the water to that shoreline. You might have a little warmer water where we saw that this past week. We were a spot where it was like 51 degrees. We got to that windy bank. It was almost 54, and that's where those snakeheads were sitting. So,
So,
yes, you're looking for that kind of stuff.
so it's the old saying for snakeheads has always been guys are fishing out in the middle in the mud flats. You're saying that as long as you get those warmer water, you're going to more of those late spring summer patterns with the shoreline stuff like that.
I wouldn't say necessarily shorelines, but just remember it's a flat.
Yeah.
So you're not really looking at any contour or anything. Yeah, it's just a flat. So you're just fan casting throughout there. They're just laying there. So, yeah, just use a search bait, work it through there, and you'll find some fish.
All right. We thank you guys for stopping by, and good luck out on the water.
Have a good one.